Hi everybody, welcome to this very special episode of The Chat. We find it's really important to come from every angle where we can in here, and on this week's episode we have the CEO of the Melbourne Racing Club in Josh Blanksby standing by.
Well, just to you, Josh, what looking ahead, obviously you couldn't have crowds on course for the Caulfield Cup Carnival, but more, you're probably looking at the All-Star Mile and also Blue Diamond Day too.
Yeah. Hi, Ben, and thanks for having me on, Matt. Look, it's great to be on and having a chat. Yeah, it's been a strange time down here in Melbourne, hasn't it? So as we sort of work through it, but as you mentioned, we feel like we're coming out of it. So we're actually, fingers crossed, hopefully maybe be able to welcome a few people back on Zipping Classic Day, Ben, which is sort of that middle of November. So we'll watch with interest Cox Plate weekend this weekend, and then obviously the Melbourne Cup Carnival, where I think they're hoping at least for some connections on course. And if the numbers continue to be low from this COVID, then yeah, hopefully we can at least have owners there for Zipping Classic Day.
Josh, we saw obviously when the news broke about the pandemic, sport around the world stopped. Fortunately for the racing circles, it did continue. The first big race day down in Melbourne was the All-Star Mile, where we had no patrons on track, and that came very, very close or very early in the piece. What was the club's immediate reaction to that, obviously knowing that there was no patrons going to be on track there?
Yeah, Matt, it was a strange time. It was a Friday afternoon when all the announcements were being done. And if you remember, the Prime Minister made the announcement regarding sort of crowds and so on. And he actually said from the Monday was when the restrictions would come in. So we're in this position at about 4 o'clock on the Friday afternoon where people were just learning about the pandemic and what it meant. And certainly our committee and our executive were just uncomfortable that, we were going to host a race day of 15 to 20,000 people when this was just starting to break. So in consultation with Racing Victoria, we made the decision to go spectator free. I must admit, at that time, we didn't think we'd still be sitting here, close to 7 months later, still with no one coming on deck. So it's been a long 7 months, but as you mentioned, it's been quite amazing that racing has been the only professional sport in Victoria to continue right through. I think we've missed maybe 2 race meetings. I remember there was one at Sandown that you'll recall after the Mark Zara scare that sort of got cancelled after about race 3. And I think maybe the next race day also got cancelled. But other than that, it's been a remarkable effort by the industry, and we've sort of battled through, and now we're in the middle of the Spring Carnival.
And Josh, what are some of the initiatives that you've had to sort of embrace due to having no crowds on course during the Caulfield Cup Carnival?
Yeah, it's certainly tested us, Ben, in terms of how we approach things, how we engage. Usually we're an events business, so that's what we're good at. We're good at getting people along, whether it's to our race days, our non-race days, into our venues, and all that's been taken away. So it's been really credit to our digital and marketing and membership teams who really had to think outside the square. And some of the initiatives, such as the members' saddlecloth for the Caulfield Cup, has been fantastically received. Just a way for our members to engage in our great race. Every member's name was on a saddlecloth. I think you might have been on. Very elegant, Ben. So, and they're currently being auctioned at the moment. So you can head to our website and bid on those, and all the proceeds go to the MRC Foundation. And just different ways like that to keep people engaged. Our members and sponsors have been fantastic and stuck by us, but they still expect value, and that's understandable. And so we obviously extended our membership for free for the year. So that goes all the way to the end of December. We didn't want any member to feel like they had to make a decision about whether they wanted to stay as a member or whether they could afford it. So we extended that, and that's been really well received, and just tried to really up our digital content. We're very lucky in having strong partners in Channel 7 and Racing.com to allow the vision to continue, and working with them. They had to find different ways because they couldn't pan to shots of the crowd or pan to guests around the racecourse. So much more focus on the racing on the track. And look, I think it's been well received. Some of the metrics we're now seeing, both from a ratings, engagement level, and also wagering turnover, have been really strong through this period.
And JB, you just mentioned those saddlecloths now. The Melbourne Racing Club Foundation, you're an integral part of that. All the proceeds are going through the Melbourne Racing Club Foundation. Can you just tell us more about the foundation itself and what it does for the charities?
Yeah, sure, Matt. So the foundation was started about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was felt that we're doing a lot of sort of different charitable activities across our pub venues, sponsorship of local footy teams, different sort of charity drives, but none of it was being done together. So we established the MRC Foundation as a central sort of point for the whole club, and it's been fantastically received. Our members really support it. And any proceeds we raise go into sort of bespoke programs to help the racing industry. And some of those are things such as the Stable Wellbeing Program, where we support the trainers and participants at our racetracks at Caulfield and Mornington. We've also come up with sort of some riding scholarships after we had two very unfortunate deaths at our race course. We wanted to make sure to improve the level of riders. So Foundation's been really well received, and we just do a few things every year, Matt. We have a gala ball around Blue Diamond, which works really well. And then our flagship event is our charity race day on MRC Foundation Race Day, which is the Naturalism, and it's a great race anyway because all the runners in that race, it's a win and in for the Caulfield Cup, so it always gets a strong race day. And all the proceeds from that day also get raised and go to the participating charities. And we have, Pincher Poo, Down Syndrome Victoria, a number of charities that have worked with us. And it's a fantastic thing that we do, I think.
And Josh, another initiative that you had was the Superboxes. And I heard you saying when you spoke to Richard on Saturday, you had about 200 of them purchased for the race day. How important do you feel it was to make them available so people could almost recreate that race day experience at home?
Yeah, this was a great idea from our hospitality team. Again, just trying to think, how can you provide that race day experience? I mean, racing's a very unique sport. On a Saturday, the actual sporting action goes for about 30 minutes. You're asking people to be there for about 6 hours. So you can tell that the social side of racing is just as important as probably what goes on track. So we felt, how do we bring that to people? And the Superboxes came about, and I think on Caulfield Cup Day, mate, it was close to 1,000 that we sold amongst our different sponsors and members. And just a really simple way to, continue our trend in hospitality and our food and beverage offering and help our sponsors. A lot of our sponsors is Moet Hennessy and Diageo and so on. Stella Artois, obviously, wanted food and beverage is extremely important to them. So, and it was just a great way to keep people engaged. All our chefs, we do all our catering in-house, which is unusual. Most race clubs outsource that. So we wanted to make sure we kept as many people employed through this whole period. So these are all the reasons we did it for, and really, really happy with how it worked out.
Real quick question before I get into my next one, mate. You have a chicken katsu sandwiches?
I had a few, mate.
Yeah, pretty good.
I plucked that one out. I didn't really. I was lucky that someone had mentioned to me. So when they asked me what was on the platter, you would have seen the chairman just threw me completely under the bus. He got asked the question and he just handballed it straight to me. So, no, they're really good food, and I've been lucky to have a few of the Superboxes here, mate.
No, excellent. And another initiative which was fantastic was the Corporal Cup Hero. Now, Deborah Ward was the winner of that. She got to walk the Caulfield Cup up to the chairman of the club in Peter Legrand. Can you just tell us around that initiative as well, Josh, and how that winner was identified?
Yeah, again, Matt, so we've been doing the sort of the celebration moment, as we call it, for the last couple of years, where we wanted to identify, someone that's dear to the hearts of Melburnians, to present the cup and honour what they'd achieved. So the year before we had Neil Danaher, and, he strikes a chord with everybody, and we've done some work with Fight MND via the foundation that we spoke about before. So Neil struck a chord. This year, when we were thinking about it, we sort of felt, well, what better way to sort of honour someone than ask our members who their everyday hero? I think COVID's probably, we've all probably reflected a little bit on what it meant, and there's a lot of people out there, frontline workers who are doing it really tough and doing a fantastic job for all of us. So we went to our members. I think we had well in excess of 200, 300 sort of nominations, and one of our members, Tracy, nominated her friend, Deborah Ward, who was also a member, which was fantastic. So very passionate racing person. She worked at the RCH, so it was great for her to be able to, just have a day off. She's been non-stop with this pandemic since sort of March. So for her to come along, and it was great to chat to her on the day, and she was just so excited, and to present the cup, I think, was fantastic. And look, some of these initiatives are great ones that you come up with during these times, and you think, well, that's a great idea. And so it may be something that we continue on with.
Communication to the members, I must say, from a member's perspective myself, and I know Matt's a member as well, Josh, has been outstanding. How important do you feel has been using the weekly email or the digital racebook to keep members engaged?
Oh, it's been integral, Ben. We're a members club. We're a not-for-profit members club. We exist for you guys. Without members, we don't exist. And so, all sporting clubs or racing clubs or bowls clubs, I mean, right now, any club is sort of trying to find a way to make sure they continue to exist for their members because, if people decide that they don't want to come back to racing afterwards, then we're sort of finished. So, we have to really sort of increase our communications, like you guys, your members are more than one club. So you would have been receiving a lot of information, a lot of uncertainty about when's it back and fees being due and things like that. So we want to be really clear and transparent with our communications and probably over communicate earlier on. And I think that I don't think you're never going to be accused of, giving too much information. So we're very transparent and look, it worked really well. And a couple of those initiatives, I mean, the MRC Tipster competition, well in excess of 1,400 members entered that on Caulfield Cup Day. That's fantastic. That's over 10% of our whole member base are entering a tipping competition. And again, that just gets people chatting about things, a way for them to engage with other members. As you know, Ben, a lot of our members, they only know each other through the race course and they come along and they're used to seeing each other on a race day. They meet at the medallion bar or they meet at another bar. So just giving them an excuse to connect again so that when we are hopefully all back at the track early next year, it's not like long forgotten. People have stayed engaged and they're ready to go again.
And Josh, you mentioned the extension of the memberships until the calendar year. Is that going to stay in place for the calendar year or go back to a season by season?
It's a good question, Matt. We actually talked about that because I've always been sort of interested in why it's done on a financial year basis. Look, we will stay at a financial year basis. We did discuss staying as a calendar year. The feeling for that is that around Christmas, like trying to go to the members around Christmas time, asking them to renew is probably not the right time. There's a lot of other things going on at that time, different financial pressures and so on. So we felt that probably wasn't the right time. So we will go back to the financial year. But what we'll do is once we have a bit more of a clearer path on what the summer autumn racing period can look like and make sure we can welcome back people, we'll go back to the members with obviously a hugely reduced sort of membership fee if we're allowed the back. If we're still not allowed members back, which is still possible, right? We still might be fairly restricted, then we will make sure that we're giving value and we won't certainly ask members for anything that we can't provide.
Now, Josh, just a little bit about you, just to probably tell our listeners and viewers about you personally. A bit of an interesting story with you. You grew up in Queensland, I believe, and you went to the Southport School and then you went to Bond Uni for your law degree. So how does a lawyer who then goes to Betfair end up as the CEO of a metropolitan race club? Very interesting path.
Yeah, mate, a bit of a different path, mate. Look, I've always been sports mad. Always grew up on the Gold Coast. So, rugby, cricket, Aussie rules, golf, everything I could get my hands on, I wanted to be involved in. And then was never good enough to make it any high level. So then you start looking, well, how do I work in sport and how do I get involved in sport? So I went down a legal path originally. Actually moved to Melbourne first time to work at a law firm. So I worked in the city, mainly focused on sort of mergers and acquisitions and commercial side of law. I really enjoyed that. Used to get to the races socially in those sort of periods, but didn't grow up in the racing industry or anything like that. Then did the few years overseas that people sort of tend to do. And I went and actually lived in Ireland for 3 years, which was fantastic and really enjoyed myself. And then when I came back, I was thinking, well, it's time to get out of being a sort of a lawyer and, be working for law firms. So I went to Betfair. And Betfair was just a sort of a fledgling outfit at the moment. I think I was the fourth employee in Melbourne when we started in 2006. It was great, and it was good to get to know the industry and understand the wagering markets. And then Betfair were the first sponsor of Sandown. So Betfair were able to secure the first sponsorship in Australia with a racing club, and that was the Melbourne Racing Club. So we got to know the guys really well through that, and got to know Mike Simons and Brodie Arnhold just through that process and that sponsorship, and then an opportunity came to join the club in the legal capacity. So my first role with the club back in 2014 was sort of looking after the legal and corporate affairs. So just sort of helping the club on that side of things, dealing with the government as we worked through some things, and it was fantastic. It was a great experience. Brodie was a great CEO, and was really sort of trying to expand the club at that stage into non-sort of racing areas. The club identified pretty early that we needed to find some diversified revenue streams. Racing wasn't going to pay the bills the whole time, so ventures such as the Pegasus Leisure Group with our venues, different events such as Peninsula Picnic, Whiskey, Wine and Fire, real focus on our non-race days, Monash exams, these type of things away from the racetrack to help fund the racing side of the business. So that's sort of been my journey. And then, when Brodie decided to move on, I was in a pretty lucky position that I was able to sort of succeed him in the CEO role, and sort of 3 years into it now, mate.
I had a bit of a look at your social media in before we came on for the chat, mate. Now, you've been, like me, myself and Ben, you've been to many racetracks in Australia, you've been to many carnivals in Australia and overseas. From the CEO's point of view, or from the Melbourne Racing Club's point of view, have you actually been to a carnival or a track and thought, wow, we really need to adopt that at the MRC and have brought that back to the table?
It's a good question. I mean, I was lucky enough to, go to Ascot, and I think the way they sort of focus on the tradition and that side of things, I think Flemington really hit that mark, and that's sort of important. I think as a race club, it's important you're true to what you stand for and what your roots are. And what I like about Caulfield is how close you are to the racing and how boutique the event space is. So somewhere like Happy Valley, I think comes to mind in terms of the vision we've sort of got for Caulfield. There's a real push to have Caulfield used more. Sporting ovals in the middle. We've announced a master plan where we'd like a second track and lights. And I think with Monash University across the road, a lot of development going on around the Caulfield race train station, and a growing area. And it is only 8 kilometres from the city, so it is very, very close. So I think that sort of Happy Valley feel, I'd love one day for someone to say, well, Caulfield has become a bit like that, where you head over there on a Wednesday evening for the midweek races, and then it still has premium races on a Saturday, and then you're there with your family on a Sunday for sporting contests or something in the middle of the race course. I think something like that is a really nice boutique sort of, I won't say informal, but just a little bit less probably formal than normal race meetings. I think that could be the future for the Melbourne Racing Club.
Well, looking ahead to the future then, Josh, just on what you say about Happy Valley, could you see maybe in the near future the twilight meetings having more of them? Because I know they have been a bit of a winner and they've been quite well attended.
Yeah, that's right, Ben. We wanted to try those because for that reason. So the Caulfield train station is one of the busiest train stations out in sort of in Melbourne, and a lot of people who live out in the southeast come through it. So the feeling was, well, could someone stop there, drop in, come for a few races, maybe have a meal, enjoy a couple of the races? So that sort of feel, that twilight. That's why I think the lights would be a fantastic sort of addition. You can see a race meeting starting at 5:15, finishing at sort of 9 o'clock, and then that sort of that sort of more informal atmosphere with the students across the road and so on. So I think there'll definitely be a real sort of focus on that, and then also just improving our facilities as part of the master plan that we've announced. It's a significant investment, sort of $250 million into Caulfield, and we feel like our members definitely deserve it. I think it's a fantastic heritage track, Caulfield, and it's got a wonderful feel when you walk into it. But I just think improving those facilities whilst keeping that history and tradition is the way to go. And the one thing we'll always focus on when doing that is making sure that your different views you have of the track, whether it's on the mounting yard or the different tracks, you can see it from everywhere. Because I think that is the unique experience of Caulfield. It doesn't take you that long to get from one end of Caulfield to the other, whereas there are other racetracks that take you a couple of races to get to the end.
Josh, we know that obviously the Underwood Stakes is predominantly run on a Sunday after the AFL Grand Final. Can you see more metropolitan meetings, say at Caulfield, on a Sunday rather than just that one meeting a year? Do you think there's room in the calendar for it?
Yeah, I don't think so, Matt. I think Sundays, I mean, it's a good day because it's a family day and we focus on it as a family day. But from a financial point of view, it's not as great. It's not a traditional wagering day, and it's probably a bit more difficult to get the sort of people along to the track. So to give you a flavour, so moving it from the Sunday to the Saturday this year, we saw growth on wagering of 61%. So good Group 1 day pushback. So I think utilising that Saturday afternoon continues. I think the growth for racing, and I think we're seeing with Moonee Valley doing a great job on Friday nights, is probably what Ben touched on before, those twilight evenings. I think that's where we can see some real growth in racing. And it might be a Saturday. It could be a Saturday twilight race meeting. I think that could be something that would be interesting, just pushing that back a little bit, especially on beautiful sort of summer days at Caulfield. So I think there's an opportunity there to push things back into new things. But, I like that sort of, I think Pakenham and Cranbourne have done well with Thursdays. So I I think you'll see a bit more sort of focus on there. But I mean, we do have to take into account the impact that has on participants and so on. I'm very conscious of that, and so I think we are looking at that twilight, early evening sort of stuff.
Away from the office and the track, what does life look like for Josh Blanksby?
Mate, it's pretty busy at the moment. I've got a 5-year-old and a 5-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. So lockdown's been there's been a lot of bike riding and trips around the block and trips to the park. So that's sort of our focus. But look, I'm very lucky, mate. I live in Caulfield South. I'm very close to the race course. My wife's American, so it's been sort of a little bit difficult during this COVID time, not being able to sort of get the opportunity to go back and see her family. So we've just been pretty bunkered down. I think, like everyone, we're pretty keen to be permitted to get out there. But golf being permitted from yesterday, so I'll try to get on the golf course a few times and actually get back up and see my family in Queensland. My parents did live up there, so we're already looking for Christmas time. So Matt, I might probably try to get back up to Magic Millions. I know you love that weekend, Ben, but that's always a favourite one, to head up there and have Christmas up there and stick around for a couple of weeks.
Oh, I can't wait for Magic Millions. I'm just live 90 seconds walk away from Doom, and so I'm loving it at the moment. Obviously being back on track, but no, it'll be great to have you up here, mate. From a CEO's point of view of the racing club, what's been the biggest challenge that you've found through this pandemic, Josh?
Oh, mate, it's probably the evolving nature of it. I mean, as we sort of mentioned, when All-Star Mile happened, we started planning pretty conservatively. We were our planning was out for sort of 6 months, and people thought we were being a little bit sort of crazy and a little bit over the top, but it's actually served us quite well. But just those constant government changes. So, as you guys know, we run a very big pub group, and for a while there were restrictions, and there was the 4 square metre rule, and so you're constantly changing these decisions, and you can't make any long-term things, and that's really difficult on the staff who are reading the same news and wondering about job losses and reduced hours and things like that. So, the communication's been really, really important, and straight away, it was only within a week of that week that we were all working from home. So there was no planning. There was no sort of, okay, let's all do this orderly. It was like, okay, the office is shut. So that's probably the most difficult thing, Matt. Straight away, you're doing sort of Teams calls or Zooms, and you're having hard conversations with people about reduced hours and not being sure when it could end. So that's probably the most difficult thing. Look, we're very lucky at Melbourne Racing Club. We've got a fantastic committee, who helped us through it all, and we've got a strong balance sheet. So even though 80% of our revenues have disappeared during this 7-month period, just sort of stopped. So, but good support from the bank, and as I said before, we've got some strong asset base, so able to sort of find our way through. And one of the things the committee kept telling me was that we've got to be ready to come back when we can. We want to hit the ground running. So, our pub group's now getting ready for that reopening on November the 2nd. Hopefully it's a little bit earlier, and we're not going to stay closed. We want to reopen and make sure people are employed and get them back to our venues. And equally on the race course, as soon as we can, we want to allow people to get back and get back to racing. Because when you're a non-for-profit, that's why you exist. So you just want to get people back there.
And people being allowed back on course, Josh, is there anything we might notice different if we're a member or if we're just a general punter who's in the public? Looking ahead, obviously, Peninsula Cup Day, like we mentioned, and some other days coming up too. I know Boxing Day is always very well attended as well, for example.
Yeah, look, it's a good question, Ben, and you won't be surprised, we've started planning. I think you'll see a lot of things outside. So I think where racing can really capitalise is that we do have big open spaces. So as you know, that summer period, we like to utilise that front lawn anyway and sort of turn it into a picnic / sort of family space. And I think you'll see a lot more of that because we just won't be able to cater for big numbers in the grandstand, if at all. So I think you'll see a lot of those spaces being used. We already started talking about maybe the middle of the track. Is there an opportunity at Caulfield and Mornington to make a big parkland, have a big screen in the middle, but very casual. People come, they bring their own picnics, they have their own areas and things like that, just so they can get back, start socialising, but they know it's in a bigger space. In talking to my colleagues sort of up north, and Matt, you can probably comment, I know you've been to the races a few times, they sort of said to me, look, it's difficult operationally. It's great that they don't have it, but still trying to limit people where they can go and restrictions and all these things and trying to get people back there. So I think for the first few meetings, Ben, I think you'll see a lot of people spread out on the lawn there, and just sort of, having a good time, but, being outside and hopefully enjoying the races.
Great insight there, Josh. let's go 12 months down the track, 2021 Caulfield Cup. Hopefully, massive crowd will be there. How much preparation goes into a big carnival like that? And when is the full stop on to say, right, this is gone? So is it 6 months before the event? Is it a couple of months before the event?
Yeah, look, the guys will start. We'll start having a think about things probably early in the year, early in the calendar year. Start sort of planning that, and I think this year will probably start even earlier because of how unusual it'll be, and what it'll even look like. So we'll have a good look at, say, how Magic Millions do it, how the ATC do it in Sydney. To sort of make sure. I've already chatting to how the ATC handled the Everest. And, they did have up to 11,000 back. So getting all those learnings, because it's just going to be so unusual. I think we're going to have operationally difficult. We'll be asking our members and our customers to come in different gates and be wristbanded. And this is the area you can go to. And that's just what we're going to have to do as sort of event people, just to make sure that we can provide a COVID-safe environment. So that planning will start pretty early, because we'll want to actually have days like Blue Diamond and CF4 with decent crowds back. So, but yeah, hopefully we just get better at that, and then the restrictions continue to be relaxed through the year, and then we really start ramping up around that sort of April, May. So 5 months before, when we get tickets on sale. And as I said, I think this will be a different year, 2021, because I think it'll be very ticketed. I think people will have to, say, yeah, this is the area I want to be in. I don't think it'll be, unfortunately, as simple as just turning up on the day. I think we'll have to sort of try to educate people that it's a little bit different. You've got to commit a little bit earlier, and you have to sort of identify your space, a bit like kind of the restaurants and the pubs it's going to be for the next few months.
And just a bit back on you being a dad, Josh, obviously they're probably a bit young to understand, but once they're a little bit older, what advice would you give to children, or anyone for that matter, looking to climb the corporate ladder, because you are a CEO of an organisation?
It's a good question, mate. I've been very lucky. I had a lot of support from my parents and my education and so on. And then, I did get some lucky breaks. And I think anyone who tells you it's not luck, it is absolute luck and being at the right place at the right time. But, I liked school, and I liked the competitive nature of school and sport and being involved. So, that's certainly what my wife and I are trying to talk to our kids about, just getting them involved in everything. And that's the major thing. So whether it's my daughter getting involved in gymnastics or swimming classes, or my son loves all sports, and we just encourage them and, tried a few different things, musical instruments and so on. I think the more things you try, you'll find something that you like. And then once you find something that you like, I think you have a crack at that.
Josh, we'll take you into what we call the final furlong, which is part of our the end of our conversation. So we thank you very much for your time here. We've just got a couple of questions to finish off.
Hey Josh, what's your earliest memory of racing growing up in Queensland?
I remember Torrific. I had Torrific in a sweep at the school for the Melbourne Cup. So what was that, 1980s? Was that 1987 or something like that? 1986. That was probably my early memory, doing a sweep at primary school.
And Josh, your most memorable moment in racing?
Most memorable. I've got a small share of Think We're Due with a couple of the guys from the office that's currently running around. It won at Caulfield, unfortunately, right during the middle of lockdown. But it won an open handicap. I beat Plumciel, and that was pretty exciting for the five of us. We're all pretty close mates at work. That was pretty exciting. That's probably my best win on a race course.
I know you're probably going to give a biased answer, but I thought I'd still ask this too, Josh. What's your favourite track?
Caulfield's my favourite track, Ben. It is. It's probably just for those reasons I said before. I find it you're close to the action. It feels a lot of fun, but also I'd probably say that because I'm the CEO and I can probably walk wherever I want. So that's also good.
Now, mate, we've been obviously blessed, all three of us, to see some of the greatest racehorses this country has ever produced. Is there a standout for you, Josh, a horse that you've just admired?
I'm probably from Queensland, mate. I used to like Vo Rogue and stuff, going around and things like that. So that was always Shootout used to be my favourite horse. I used to back Shootout everywhere. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? I mean, we're very, very blessed with some great horses, and I think that just someone actually made the comment that racing you always think that the great horse is gone, and then another one just pops up. And I think at the moment, I really hope Russian Camelot comes out on Saturday in the Cox Plate, because it could be a superstar.
Your biggest influence on your career to date, Josh?
My career, I had a very good mentor at Betfair, Ben, a guy called Andrew Twaits, who when I went and started working with him, and he probably guided me the most. He was an ex-Cricket Australia lawyer, then went across to Betfair, so he was sort of the one who sort of led probably the wagering operators as they sort of came into Australia, and that was sort of my opportunity to sort of start working with sports and government about how the wagering landscape would work once the online operators came in. So he's probably had the biggest influence.
And Josh, you've obviously been the CEO now of one of the biggest racing clubs in the country. What's been your proudest achievement as the CEO of the Melbourne Racing Club?
That's a good question. Look, I think I just think how we're sort of how we're seen it from the outside, Matt. I think we sort of set a vision that we wanted to be known as a progressive and innovative entertainment and sports club, and I think that's sort of what I'm keen for people to see us as, and it's great when that sort of gets fed back to you. Look, sometimes we put our head above the parapet and gets whacked off, like when we suggest to move the Melbourne Cup Carnival backwards, and we all move back, and everyone is, gets pretty angry and things like that. But you're not going to sort of suggest those things and start pushing the changes. So I probably see that as the best achievement so far, just sort of continuing to sort of push people and just change the narrative a bit. And sometimes when you're the challenger brand, you can sort of do that. And I think the Melbourne Racing Club is seen like that externally.
And your favourite sport away from racing, Josh? I believe you're a Carlton fan. Is that correct?
I am a Carlton fan, Ben. Yes. So I enjoy Carlton, but in fairness, the sport I grew up with and probably the one I'm most passionate about is rugby union. So I grew up playing that my whole life, played that down here. So as much as I sort of tried to, now the Wallabies aren't going great, as soon as they're back on TV, I find myself pretty glued to them. So probably rugby union, mate.
Who did you play for in Melbourne, Josh?
Powerhouse. Yeah. No, I played Powerhouse for a long time, mate, down at Albert Park.
Fantastic. Well, Josh, thank you so much for your time, mate. We really appreciate it, especially coming off the back of what has been a very different feel to the Stella Artois Caulfield Cup. Benny and I are very proud members of the club, and we're very proud of how yourself, Pete Legrand, and the whole entire organisation have just led us through this horrible pandemic. We look forward to catching up with you on course for a Stella Artois very soon.
Good on you guys. I think it's great what you're doing, and thanks for being members of the club and sticking by us. It's good.
Appreciate it. No problems, mate. Well, that's all we've got time for on this episode of The Chat. Thanks again to Josh Blanksby and the Melbourne Racing Club for that fantastic access. We'll see you again next week.